You don't think of yourself as traumatized. Trauma, in your mind, is for people who've been through something extreme, something obvious, something that would make the evening news. Not you. You had a normal childhood, a normal life. Nothing catastrophic happened. And yet, you find yourself shutting down in the middle of arguments for no clear reason. You apologize constantly, even when you've done nothing wrong. You feel a creeping anxiety in situations that should feel completely safe. You struggle to trust people, even the ones who have never given you a reason not to. You sabotage things when they start going well, relationships, opportunities, moments of genuine happiness, and you don't know why. You've wondered if something is wrong with you. There isn't, but something did happen to you. And the reason you don't recognize it as trauma is because the most common forms of emotional trauma don't look like what you've seen in movies. They don't announce themselves. They don't leave visible scars. They live quietly inside the nervous system, shaping your reactions, your relationships, and your sense of self in ways most people spend their entire lives never understanding. Until today. In the next few minutes, we're going to decode the hidden signs of unresolved emotional trauma, what they look like, where they come from, and what they mean about the healing available to you. Before we get into the signs, we need to completely reframe what trauma actually is, because the definition most people carry is far too narrow. The clinical world distinguishes between two categories: big T trauma, the events most people associate with the word: abuse, accidents, violence, natural disasters, combat. These are acute, overwhelming experiences that shatter a person's sense of safety in a single moment. Small T traumas, and this is where most people's unrecognized wounds live, small T traumas are the chronic, cumulative experiences that don't look dramatic from the outside, but are deeply destabilizing to a developing nervous system. A parent who was emotionally unavailable, a household where love felt conditional, being repeatedly criticized, humiliated, or dismissed as a child, growing up walking on eggshells, being parentified, made responsible for an adult's emotional well-being, chronic loneliness, bullying, neglect that was never physical but was profoundly emotional. None of these make the news. Many of them were probably never even spoken about in your family. Some of the people who caused them had no intention of causing harm. But the nervous system doesn't grade trauma on intent. It grades it on impact. Dr. Gabor Mate, one of the world's leading voices on trauma and the mind-body connection, defines trauma not as what happened to you, but what happened inside you as a result of what happened to you. The wound isn't the event. The wound is the disconnection from self that the event created. And that disconnection, however it formed, leaves traces. These are the signs, the 8 hidden signs. Sign 1. You struggle to feel safe, even when you are. You're sitting in a comfortable room. Nothing is wrong. No threat exists. And yet, your body is on alert. There's a low hum of tension that never quite goes away. A background anxiety you've lived with so long you've stopped noticing it. It just feels like you. Your heart rate spikes in neutral situations. You scan rooms when you enter them. You struggle to fully relax, even in sleep. You catastrophize small things because your nervous system doesn't distinguish between an actual threat and a perceived one. This is called hypervigilance, and it is one of the most common and least recognized signs of unresolved trauma. Here's what's happening physiologically. The autonomic nervous system, the part that regulates your threat response, was calibrated during your early years. If your early environment was unpredictable, critical, or unsafe in any way, your nervous system learned to stay permanently switched on. Like a smoke alarm with a faulty sensor, it goes off not because there's fire, but because it was wired in an environment where fire was always possible. Dr. Peter Levine, founder of Somatic Experiencing Therapy, describes trauma as energy that gets stuck in the body when a threat response was activated but never fully completed. The body is still braced for an impact that already happened years ago. You are not anxious because your life is dangerous. You are anxious because your nervous system hasn't yet learned that the danger is over. That is a profound distinction, and it is the beginning of understanding. Sign 2. You over-apologize or struggle to set boundaries. Pay attention to how often you say sorry, not for genuine mistakes, but reflexively, automatically, for taking up space, for having needs, for existing in a way that might inconvenience someone else. Sorry to bother you. Sorry, this might be a stupid question. Sorry for even bringing this up. Or perhaps you don't apologize, but you can't say no. You agree to things that drain you. You prioritize everyone else's comfort over your own. The thought of disappointing someone fills you with a disproportionate dread. This pattern has a name in psychology: fawning. It was first described by therapist Pete Walker as the fourth trauma response, alongside fight, flight, and freeze. Fawning develops in environments where a child learned that safety came from pleasing others, where expressing needs led to punishment, withdrawal of love, or emotional explosion. The child, brilliantly, adaptively, learned to shrink, to anticipate what others needed and provided before conflict could arise, to make themselves as unthreatening as possible. That child became an adult who apologizes for breathing. Chronic people-pleasing is not a personality trait. It is a survival strategy that outlived the environment that created it. And the inability to set boundaries isn't weakness. It's a nervous system that learned early that boundaries weren't safe to have.
Sign 3. You shut down or explode in conflict. How do you behave in conflict? Not the version of yourself you'd like to be, the actual version, the one that shows up when something hits a nerve. Do you go completely cold and silent, walls up, unreachable, shut down entirely? Or do you explode, a reaction so disproportionate to what just happened that even you are surprised by it? Both are trauma responses. The shutdown, called dissociation or emotional freezing, is the nervous system's emergency brake. When emotional overwhelm reaches a certain threshold, the system disconnects. It's the same mechanism that causes people to feel numb after a major loss, the mind protecting itself from what it can't yet process. If you learned early that expressing emotion was dangerous, that anger got punished, that tears were dismissed, that vulnerability led to attack, your system learned to switch off instead. The explosion is the opposite end of the same spectrum, an accumulation of suppressed emotion that finally breaches the wall, often triggered by something seemingly small, because it isn't actually about the small thing. It's about every small thing that was never allowed to be expressed. Trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, describes this as the body finally speaking what the mind was never allowed to say. Neither the shutdown nor the explosion is the problem. They are the symptoms. The problem is what was never safe to feel and never safe to say a long time ago. Sign 4. You struggle to trust even people who've earned it. You want to trust, you genuinely do, but there's something underneath that watching. Something that waits for the other shoe to drop, that looks for signs of betrayal even in the most loving relationships, that keeps one foot out the door just in case. You might call it being realistic, cautious, a good judge of character. Sometimes it is, but when the distrust is indiscriminate, when it attaches to people who have consistently shown you they are safe, it's something else. It's a nervous system that learned in formative years that the people who were supposed to be safe were not always safe. Attachment theory, pioneered by John Bowlby and expanded by Mary Ainsworth, tells us that our earliest relationships create an internal working model of how relationships function, a template. If the template says, people leave, people hurt you, love is conditional, closeness leads to pain, then every new relationship gets filtered through that lens, no matter how different the person is.
This is why trauma in relationships is so painful and so confusing. You are not responding to the person in front of you. You are responding to everyone who came before them. The heart learns early, and it takes time, safety, and often intentional healing to teach it something new.
Sign 5. You self-sabotage when things are going well. This one is perhaps the most quietly devastating sign of all. Things start going well. A relationship deepens. A career opportunity opens up. A moment of genuine happiness arrives. And something in you, some invisible hand, reaches out and pushes it away. You start an argument for no real reason. You pull back emotionally right when someone gets close. You miss the opportunity. You drink too much, spend too much, disappear. And afterward, you don't fully understand why. Psychology calls this self-sabotage, but the mechanism beneath it is more specific than that term suggests. For many people carrying unresolved trauma, happiness itself is a threat, not consciously, but on a nervous system level. If your early experiences taught you that good things don't last, that happiness is always followed by loss, that love always precedes abandonment, then your system learns to preempt the pain. Better to destroy it yourself than to have it taken from you. There is also something called a window of tolerance, the range of emotional experience a person's nervous system can handle without either shutting down or going into crisis. For those with unresolved trauma, this window is often narrow. Genuine joy, deep love, real success, these are intense emotional experiences. And a nervous system calibrated for survival rather than flourishing can find them genuinely destabilizing. You don't sabotage because you don't deserve good things. You sabotage because part of you has never learned to believe they can stay. Sign 6. You feel disconnected from your body or emotions. Someone asks you how you're feeling, and you genuinely don't know. Not because you're avoiding the question, because when you look inward, there's a kind of static, a blankness, a disconnection between you and your own inner experience. Or perhaps it's physical. You don't notice hunger until you're ravenous. You don't notice exhaustion until you collapse. You live primarily in your head. The body feels like a vehicle you're driving from a distance. This is called dissociation or emotional numbness, and it is one of the most direct fingerprints of trauma on the nervous system. When emotional or physical experience becomes too overwhelming, the mind creates distance from it. This is a protective mechanism, brilliant in the moment of crisis. But when it becomes chronic, when you live in that distance permanently, you lose access to one of your most important sources of information, your own felt experience. Your body holds wisdom. It signals danger before your mind registers it. It knows things your conscious thoughts haven't caught up to yet. Trauma cuts you off from that signal. Reconnecting to the body through somatic therapy, mindfulness, breathwork, movement is not just wellness advice. For trauma survivors, it is a profound and necessary act of reclamation. You were not born disconnected from yourself. Something disconnected you. And what was disconnected can, with care and time, be reconnected. Sign 7. You have a deep fear of abandonment or rejection. The fear of abandonment is so universal among trauma survivors that many therapists consider it one of the core wounds. It shows up as staying in relationships long past their expiry because being alone feels unsurvivable. Texting someone 3 times before they've replied once and spiraling in the silence. Doing emotional gymnastics to keep people from leaving. Interpreting neutral behavior, a short reply or canceled plan, as evidence that someone is pulling away. This fear is almost never about the present situation. It is about a time, usually early, when someone important actually left, or threatened to leave, or was emotionally absent in a way that felt like abandonment, even if they were physically present.
The child's brain, which cannot fully distinguish between emotional absence and literal abandonment, registered it as, "The people I need most might disappear. I must do everything in my power to prevent that." That child is still running the show in adult relationships. The fear of abandonment is not neediness. It is a wound that never received the message, "You are not going to be left. You are safe to need people. You are safe to be yourself." Healing this fear is not about becoming less attached. It is about becoming more securely attached, learning slowly that not everyone leaves. Sign 8. You have an inner critic that never quiets. There is a voice inside you. It notices every mistake. It catalogs every flaw. It tells you that you are too much and not enough simultaneously, that you should have done better, that you are fundamentally, irreparably flawed. Most people assume this voice is just honest self-awareness. It isn't. It is the internalized voice of every person or experience that made you feel inadequate, unworthy, or unlovable, absorbed into your own psychology and weaponized against you from the inside. Psychologist John Bradshaw called this toxic shame, not the healthy guilt of having done something wrong, but the bone-deep belief that you are something wrong. It develops in environments where a child received the message, overtly or subtly, that their value was conditional, that love had to be earned, that who they naturally were was not quite enough. The inner critic is not your truth. It is your history speaking in the voice of the present. And recognizing that distinction, even slightly, even for a moment, is the first crack of light through a door that has been closed for a very long time. This is not your fault, and it is not permanent. I want to sit with you here for a moment before we close. If any of those 8 signs landed, if you recognized yourself in 2 or 3 or all of them, I want you to hear something clearly. This is not a character flaw. It is not weakness. It is not being broken. It is not something you manufactured or chose. It is the entirely predictable, entirely human result of a nervous system that adapted to circumstances it was given before you were old enough to choose, before you had the language to understand what was happening, before you knew any other way to be. You were doing the only thing any living thing does, surviving. The signs we've talked about today, the hypervigilance, the people-pleasing, the shutting down, the self-sabotage, the inner critic, they were all at some point adaptations that protected you. They are not your enemy. They are the parts of you that kept you going when keeping going was hard. The work, the beautiful, difficult, worthwhile work, is not to destroy those parts. It is to thank them, to understand them, and then slowly to show them that they no longer need to work so hard. Because the threat has passed. You survived. And now the question is not, how do I stay safe? The question is, how do I finally begin to live? That answer is available to you. Through therapy, particularly somatic, EMDR, or trauma-informed approaches, through honest, patient relationships where you practice being known, through learning to return to your body, through giving yourself the compassion you have always given everyone else. Healing is not linear. It is not fast. It is not the absence of pain, but it is real. And it begins, as all things begin, with understanding. There is a version of you that exists beyond the hypervigilance, beyond the apologies, the walls, the waiting for things to fall apart. A version that trusts, not blindly, but genuinely, that feels safe in their own body, that lets good things stay, that knows without needing to earn it in every moment that they are worthy of love. That version is not someone you have to become from scratch. It is who you were before the world taught you to be afraid. Healing is not building a new self. It is finding your way back to the one that was always there, waiting, quietly, underneath everything that happened. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Decode the Mind and leave a comment below. Which of these signs did you recognize most in yourself? Your story might be the thing that helps someone else feel less alone. I'll see you in the next one.